So in just a few minutes, the unemployment news in the US will be released. By the way, if we go short, technical analysis will also work in our favor. It's a red value. The market reacted correctly and I entered the long position correctly. There are 4 minutes left until the trade closes. Hello everyone, you're on my trading channel. My name is Mary and I can be your personal trader. I created this YouTube channel to share my experience with you, so make sure to subscribe because there will be a lot of interesting content here. Today let's talk about inflation, what it is and why it's worth trading on inflation. Of course I will make a trade based on inflation. I do it every time and I recommend it to you as well. So, what is inflation? Inflation is a crisis process for rising prices for goods and services which leads to the devaluation of fiat money and subsequent depreciation of the national currency. It is an essential element of fundamental analysis for forex and stock market investors and traders. The term inflation comes from the Latin word inflatio, which means swelling or inflating. Inflation is the reduction in the purchasing power of money, where banknotes and coins of a certain denomination can buy fewer goods and services than before. Open inflation manifests itself in the increase in prices for goods and services and is measured as a percentage of the previous cost. Often, consumers, after reviewing the latest official statistics, wonder, who are they fooling? Prices have increased much more than that. Why does this happen? The explanation is simple. The inflation rate is not calculated based on one or a few items. If cabbage and potatoes doubled in price compared to summer prices, it doesn't mean that inflation was 100%. Inflation is calculated based on a consumer basket that includes a specific quantity of goods and services. Some people consume less, while others consume more, and the government has derived an average figure. Vegetarians do not buy meat, so they don't care how much it has become more expensive or cheaper. They may not even be aware of that. However, they do notice and feel the changes in prices for beans, potatoes, and other vegetables and fruits in their wallets. Someone lives in their own apartment and doesn't care about the changes in rental prices, but both homeowners and tenants care about the changes in utility prices. So inflation is the overall change in prices for goods and services, including the consumer basket. Consumers experience inflation to a greater or lesser extent depending on their consumption of these goods and services. Inflation doesn't spare either poor or rich countries. The difference lies in its rates. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, is also known as the inflation index. When we read about the level of inflation in the news, it's usually referring to the Consumer Price Index. The inflation index is often calculated on a monthly or yearly basis. Yearly inflation represents the change in average prices of reference year compared to the previous year. If the inflation rate in 2019 was 4.2%, it means that the cost of the consumer basket in 2019 was 4.2% higher than it was in 2018. The annual inflation index can be calculated relative to any earlier year to see how prices changed in 2019, not only compared to 2018, but also compared to 2015, 1990, or any other year. Monthly inflation represents the change in the cost of the consumer basket compared to the previous month or the same month of the previous year. The inflation index is calculated based on the changes in the cost of only those goods and services that are included in the consumer basket. Any price changes for other goods and services do not affect the consumer price index. The composition of the consumer basket and the weights are regularly reviewed. Types of inflation. Inflation is classified based on the rate of its growth as follows: moderate and creeping inflation up to 10%, galloping inflation up to 50%, and hyperinflation above 50%. With moderate inflation, the annual increase in consumer price does not exceed 10%. In fact, reaching the 10% mark or being close to it is a worrisome factor since it is a high risk of transitioning to the next level, galloping inflation, which is characterized by rates of 10 and 50%. High inflation rates are not typical for developed countries. For example, the average inflation index in European Union countries does not exceed 3.5%. Developing countries experience either the upper limit of creeping inflation or the initial level of galloping inflation. Their economies undergo significant growth, citizens' welfare increases, and there is a rising demand for goods and services which leads to price increases, means inflation. So in just a few minutes, the unemployment news in the US will be released. They usually have a significant impact on the market. There are only 2 minutes left, as the investing.com portal indicates. The unemployment rate is expected to be lower than in the previous report. Just a reminder, if the actual unemployment value is in red, I will go long. But if the actual value is green, I will go short. It works the same way as non-farm data. There are no differences in that regard. By the way, if we go short, technical analysis will also work in our favor. Although in reality, technical analysis doesn't play any role here. I will trade the euro-dollar pair because it reacts best to domestic news from the United States. If we trade, for example, on the Australian dollar and Japanese yen pair or any other pair, we will get very poor movement. This can lead to significant losses, so I recommend trading only the euro-dollar pair during American news releases. Alright, we have less than a minute left before our trade begins. According to investing.com, besides unemployment, there are no other important news releases at the moment. Important news is indicated by 3 stars. Currently, there are only 1 important news release, and I will enter a trade for 5 minutes with $3,000. Why 5 minutes? Because the 5-minute candle will be the largest. After that, there will likely be 1 or 2 more 5-minute candles that will most likely be in our favor, but it's better to enter for 5 minutes, lock in the profit, and take a break. We now have just 30 seconds until our trade. The chart is gradually starting to react to the upcoming news. The exchange rate is starting to drop now. I wonder where it's heading. I'm also curious about what we'll actually get, because the situation in America is quite negative, if not downright sad, both with the FRS and the SEC. Powell is suggesting unclear things here, but I think everyone knows about it. Alright, the chart is taking off. I'm entering the position. Let's refresh the page. I feel like investing.com has been providing data with a delay lately. It's already been 57 seconds, but the actual unemployment results haven't appeared yet. Here, I'm refreshing the page, but the result isn't showing up. Oh, there it is. It's a red value. The market reacted correctly and I entered the long position correctly. A red value means that the actual data is lower than expected. In other words, the unemployment rate is lower than anticipated, which is good because the higher the unemployment rate, the worse it is for the US market. Overall, it's clear. There are 4 minutes left until the trade closes. I'm confident that it will close in a profit because there's been a strong movement on the chart, but I entered at the very beginning. Of course, there was a slight retracement, but that's also the case in the first 1 to 2 minutes after the news release. The main movement will start from the 3rd minute. Now we can wait and lock in the result. So in a few seconds, the trade will close with a profit. I was hoping for an even stronger upward impulse, but instead I got high volatility. However, thanks to entering the market quickly, I made a profit of $2,760. Trading on news is very simple, but during such moments, you need to continuously monitor the market and not fall for the initial fake movement. Well, what do you say? I think now the questions about why it's worth trading on inflation have definitely been answered. But again, I'm here working for you. I have Telegram groups, so subscribe, add me as a friend, and follow my signals. Trade along with me. It was a pleasure being with you, your personal trader, Mary.